Hi, this is Paul Spica with Spica Real Estate, and you're watching our first-time home buyer video series. And this series is You Found the One, Putting It Under Contract. In our last video, we talked about kind of narrowing down the process of looking at 5 to 10 houses, narrowing it down to 2 or 3, and then finding the one. Once you found the one, now it's time to put an offer, to make an offer on the home. In the real estate industry, when an offer is made, typically we put this in a written document that's called the purchase agreement. And the purchase agreement doesn't become binding until everybody has signed it and all parties accept the terms. The terms of the purchase agreement are going to vary, and every property and every buyer and every seller create a very unique situation. No two transactions are ever the same. And so I'll go through some of the basic nuts and bolts of the transaction, of the purchase agreement, but ultimately your experienced real estate agent will be able to walk you through the whole document, walk you through the whole process from start to finish, and help you understand what do we have to do, how do we do this thing called a purchase agreement. So we found the property, we make an offer, and we fill it out, and we say, here's what we're going to offer on the property. And the purchase agreement document that we use in the West Michigan area has a section on the very last page where the seller can say, yes, we accept your offer, or yes, we accept it, but, and then there's a blank space where they can write effectively their counter offer. And so mechanically, we make an offer, the seller comes back, possibly makes a counter offer. We then have the opportunity to accept or counteroffer again or reject. And so we kind of, that's where the back and forth goes. And if the seller counters and we want to counter back, usually we counter back on a brand new document rather than taking that same document back and forth a bunch of times. I always recommend that buyers review this document. It's about a 6-page document. I always recommend that buyers review this document very early on in our relationship, even well before we've actually made an offer. It's a 6-page document, it's a legal document, and it's very helpful for buyers to have a basic understanding of the terms in the agreement prior to writing an offer, especially in a highly competitive situation. If there are multiple offers, if it's a hot property on the market and you know that there's a deadline and you're right up against that, it's very helpful to be able to say, I've read this, I understand it, let's fill in the blanks and get it submitted quickly. When your agent submits your purchase agreement, you are officially making an offer. This offer has quite a few different terms in it, which your agent will go over with you. If they don't, ask a lot of questions. One of the terms in this purchase agreement is your basic timeline. There's going to be a bunch of milestones or a bunch of dates in there that lay out your timeline of when it's under contract to when you would like to close. There's also a timeline of when the seller needs to respond by. What's their deadline for responding? If the seller doesn't respond within that timeline, then you as the buyer are no longer bound by the terms of the purchase agreement. But up until that deadline, if they accept it as written, you are bound by the terms that you've proposed. If the seller does reply with a counteroffer, they will likely do the same thing with regards to the timeline. They will give you a specified amount of time to respond to their counteroffer. And then this is where that back and forth starts to play out. Negotiating is an art. Your real estate agent hopefully has a fair bit of experience in the real estate industry and negotiating transactions. Everybody has a slightly different style. Everybody does it a little bit differently, but it is an art. We like to have a conversation with our buyer clients up front and say, here's where it's listed. Here's where our offer is going to come in. Where do you feel comfortable landing? Not to say that we are going to land there. Maybe it's a list price of $100,000 and we're going to offer $90,000 and we feel comfortable paying up to $97,000. And I, as your agent, can't and I won't go right to that 97, but I know that that's kind of your ceiling. That's where you feel comfortable. And again, every situation is going to be a little bit different. But we like to, as Stephen Covey will say, we like to keep the end in mind. We like to know what that end goal kind of looks like on the front end. Every transaction is different. Every buyer, every seller situation is different. And the more your agent knows about you and your situation, and the more they know about the other party's situation, the more likely they will be able to put together a transaction that works really well for everybody. When you write an offer, there are going to be, or likely going to be, contingencies that you write into the purchase agreement. And a contingency is a specific item or a specific thing that you need to do that before you can buy the property, or these things need to happen, and they're subject to, the purchase is subject to your ability to get these things done. The most common contingencies are going to be inspections, financing, and maybe even an appraisal. It's not uncommon for purchase agreement negotiations to take up to a day or two, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, depending on every situation and the unique characteristics of every situation. When we submit an offer, we like to submit the offer with a copy of your pre-approval letter if it's a financed transaction, and this proves to the seller that we've thought through this and that you are ready to go. We have financing already lined up. In addition to the pre-approval letter, we like to submit a copy of the earnest money check that you've written. An earnest money check is a line item in the purchase agreement that says, here's a few bucks that we're going to hold in escrow that proves that we are serious about buying this. In fact, we'll talk about the security deposit or the escrow deposit in our next video. Again, thanks for watching. My name is Paul Spica with Spica Real Estate, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.